Nevada warns that Lake Mead's shrinking supply could cripple Hoover Dam. Scientists uncover hidden springs under the Great Salt Lake. The U.S. Drought Monitor shows where things are getting worse. And in this week's Blast from the Basin, we'll rewind to 1934, when Arizona and California nearly went to war over Parker Dam with rifles, machine guns, and even a ferry called the Arizona Navy. Welcome to Western Water Weekly, your roundup of the past week's water news from the Colorado River Basin and beyond.
We start in Las Vegas, where Nevada leaders met at the Southern Nevada Water Summit to talk about the future of Lake Mead and Hoover Dam. Congresswoman Susie Lee brought together water and energy experts to stress how urgent these negotiations have become. The 7 Colorado River Basin states are racing against a November deadline to agree on how to share the river once current rules expire in 2026. Southern Nevada Water Authority leaders admitted, quote, "We are nowhere close to an agreement. Lake Mead is only 31% full, 175 feet below capacity. Without changes, hydropower from Hoover Dam could plummet by 70% if water levels fall just 20 more feet." Nevada is pushing conservation, highlighting projects like its third straw intake and low-level pumping station, which guarantee access even at critically low water levels. Federal investments, including billions from the Inflation Reduction Act, are helping stabilize Lake Mead in the short term. But long-term solutions remain unsettled. Next, a smaller but fascinating story on the Colorado River. On September 16th, the Bureau of Reclamation will briefly reduce releases from Davis Dam to expose caddisflies along the riverbanks. Why? Because these insects swarm riverfront communities like Bullhead City and Laughlin, driving locals and tourists crazy. By lowering flows for 9 hours, larvae and pupae clinging to riverbanks will dry out or be eaten by birds and bats. But it comes with risks. During the operation, sandbars and submerged objects could suddenly appear, creating hazards for boaters. This is part of an ongoing study to find community-friendly solutions while balancing river operations. At World Water Week in Stockholm, UNICEF and the World Health Organization released a stark report. 1 in 4 people worldwide still lacks access to safe drinking water. That's about 2.1 billion people. Another 3.4 billion exist without safely managed sanitation. The problem isn't just global. Many tribal communities in the Colorado River Basin face the same reality. On the Navajo Nation, up to 40% of households still lack running water. The Hopi tribe has battled arsenic contamination for decades. These are basic human rights issues, and the parallels show that water inequality is both a worldwide and local crisis. A breakthrough may be at hand in one of the West's longest-running legal battles. Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, and the federal government filed settlement agreements in the Supreme Court case Texas versus New Mexico and Colorado. The case began in 2013, when Texas accused New Mexico of withholding Rio Grande water in violation of a 1938 compact. If approved, the deal would end more than a decade of litigation and bring certainty to 6 million people and farmers who rely on the Rio Grande. The Supreme Court will review the settlement after a hearing later this month.
Here's this week's Blast from the Basin, where we dive into old newspaper headlines that show just how wild Western water history really was. In the fall of 1934, Arizona and California nearly went to war, not with bombs or planes, but with ferries and machine guns. The fight was over Parker Dam, a project on the Colorado River designed to funnel water to Southern California. Governor Benjamin Moore of Arizona was furious. He argued that California was building without proper authorization and would drain the river before Arizona secured its share. In one Associated Press report, he declared, "It's a showdown this time. We're going to get something or we aren't." And so, Arizona mobilized. 40 riflemen and 20 machine gunners from the National Guard were dispatched to the river. Newspapers described the site as a 3-square-mile war zone. But the most unforgettable image came when Arizona pressed a mud scow named the Julia B into service. This flat-bottomed ferry, all 21 tons of her, was captained by none other than Mrs. Nellie T. Bush, Arizona's only licensed woman pilot and a newly elected state senator. The press gleefully dubbed it the Arizona Navy. With Nellie Bush at the helm, more than 100 guardsmen were ferried upstream, armed with rifles, machine guns, and even a medical corps. Headlines called it Arizona's last stand on the Colorado River. From Washington, Secretary of the Interior Harold Ike scoffed. He told reporters, Arizona is to be congratulated that its financial condition is such that she can afford to call out the National Guard. But there was no occasion for calling out troops in this instance. For a brief moment, Arizona seemed to win. The Supreme Court halted construction because Congress hadn't properly authorized the dam. But the victory was short-lived. By 1935, Congress passed a law blessing the project, and Parker Dam went forward. Governor Moore even threatened to send the militia back, insisting, I have never lifted martial law from the area on the Arizona side of the river. In the end, California got its pipeline and Arizona's Navy faded into legend. But the fight over Colorado River water didn't end there. Nearly 30 years later, the two states were still locked in battle in the U.S. Supreme Court. The 1963 case of Arizona versus California finally divided the river's mainstream water. California got 4.4 million acre-feet, Arizona 2.8 million, and Nevada 300,000. That was this week's blast from the basin. A reminder that today's water battles aren't so new. They've just traded ferries and rifles for courtrooms and contracts.
Back to the present. In California's Central Valley, well owners now face a registration deadline. The North Kings Groundwater Sustainability Agency is requiring all wells, whether household, farm, industrial, or public, to be registered by November 30th. The goal is to close data gaps so managers can track aquifer use under California's Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. Officials warned that if locals don't comply, the state could step in with costly requirements like mandatory meters and pumping fees. Arizona is taking public comments on nearly 3.7 million in proposed water protection projects. Applications range from restoring wetlands and removing invasive plants to urban flow studies in Phoenix. Comments are open through October 17th. Also this week, the Bureau of Reclamation launched an environmental review for proposed one-year water transfers in California. Up to 250,000 acre-feet of water could be moved from willing sellers north of the Delta to buyers in the Bay Area and San Joaquin Valley. Public comments are open until October 3rd, with hearings scheduled both online and in person. Scientists at the University of Utah have discovered mysterious freshwater springs emerging beneath the Great Salt Lake's exposed lakebed. These hidden flows create reed-covered mounds and may account for a much larger share of the lake's water budget than previously believed. Understanding these springs could be critical for restoring fragile lakebed crusts that prevent toxic dust from blowing into nearby communities. Researchers warn, however, that this fragile groundwater system should not be viewed as a new water supply to exploit. Finally, this week's U.S. Drought Monitor shows worsening drought in the Midwest, Mid-Atlantic, and Northeast, with some of the driest records on file. Out west, California's largest reservoirs remain strong. Lake Shasta is 104% of average, and Lake Oroville 112%. But Colorado River reservoirs continue to struggle. Lake Powell is only 29% full, while Lake Mead is 31%. Arizona's monsoon rains were weak this year, while parts of New Mexico and Colorado saw localized improvements, thanks to scattered storms and cooler temperatures. Looking ahead, the forecast shows above normal heat returning to much of the West by mid-September. That's your water news for the week of September 1 through 6, 2025. For more details, visit western-water.com, where we publish new stories every day except Sunday. Comment below, share your thoughts, and subscribe so you don't miss next week's report. Thanks for watching and see you next time.